All right, welcome back, Krueg Show on a Thursday as we crawl closer, ever so closer to Niner training camp. The report date is the 26th of July. The first practice set for the July the 27th. Kyle Posey with us here from Niners Nation. The managing editor stops by every Thursday at 3 o'clock as we chop up all things Niners. What's up, Kyle? How are you, man?
2 weeks, man. 2 weeks. No arm fatigue. No guessing who's going to be there.
No fake stories.
Right. No, we don't have to worry about national media members just trying to plug their own stuff or just make their voice the part of the story. I'm ready for it, man. I can't wait. How are you?
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's funny. It is the dead time, and it's funny. There's all this talk about the arm fatigue and this and that, and you saw Ayuk and Kittle on social media kind of spoofing that and joking about that, and it's a product. I mean, I'm not saying anybody's evil or anybody who's, has nefarious intent, but I've been doing YouTube long enough to know that if you talk Niners, you get a lot of hits. If you get a lot of hits, generally that's good for whatever company or website or YouTube channel you're working for. And then if you talk Trey Lance, oh my goodness, now Trey Lance within the Niners, sphere, oh my God, now you're really getting hits because there's a lot of interest in what Trey Lance is going to be and a lot of curiosity. And suddenly we're supposed to believe that these stories that almost seem like they kind of come up out of nowhere and have no real substance to them, but include Trey Lance, but they're all incredibly credible. I mean, it's just, right. It's just like, I don't know. Call me. I'll be the one on that's skeptical that there's nothing really there and that those things are done for hits.
I am so happy that players nowadays are taking to social media and calling out BS because they're there. They know what's real and what's not. And you mentioned like Kittle and Ayuk. It wasn't just those two. It was Juszczyk. It was Trent Williams. Essentially all of the offensive starters who have an Instagram made their way to the comment section and said like, hey, this is a spoof. This isn't real life. So it's just, I'm glad that they do that, but hopefully, 2 weeks from now, we're actually talking about the practice.
It's interesting. One of the things I took from minicamp that I thought was kind of interesting is that Kyle Juszczyk said that when the football offseason begins, he doesn't want to shut it down, but he wants to do a bunch of different sports. So he plays tennis and he plays pickup basketball and he, does a number of different things. And they asked him why he does it. And he said, I really believe in kind of strengthening my body and not just the same way over and over and over again in a repeat motion, just it's the small, ankle muscles and balance and everything that goes into strengthening you as an athlete overall. I get that a little bit from tennis and a little bit from cycling and a little bit from pickup basketball and a little bit from running and a little bit from stretching and a little bit from yoga. And he started talking about all these different things that he typically does. And I'm not sure if every one of those that I named is on his list, but you get the picture. He's doing a lot of different sports. And I've always believed that as well as a scout that just, show me the athlete that's playing whatever sport it is that you're scouting. That's obvious. But then show me a guy that's a multi-sport athlete. Show me a guy that plays baseball and basketball or soccer or in football's case, maybe track and field or wrestling. So maybe he's a sprinter, maybe he's a shot putter. It doesn't really matter to me what it is. I just think that when you do multiple sports, I think those athletes have a tendency to, I don't have any empirical data on this, but I would go as far as to say that those athletes stay healthier than other athletes. What do you think? You're around youth football, and obviously you're well, informed on the pros. What do you think of what Juszczyk had to say and how he kind of, attacks the off season?
That sounds like an Ivy League grad right there, because there are studies that back up everything that you're just saying. So yeah, high school, I coach high school football. 3 of our 4 starters in the secondary plucked off the basketball court, in the outfield, and off the track and field, just for the relay team, 4x1 team. So The best athletes are playing multiple sports, and we encourage them to play multiple sports. Most of the linemen, like the best linemen, usually have a wrestling background. So, like you said, so pick up basketball, for example, great for cardio. Obviously, you're moving your feet a lot too. So, baseball, hand-eye coordination. So, the receivers can catch the ball and they can cover a lot of ground in the outfield. And then track speaks for itself. Just strong sprinters, linear athletes. It's a no-brainer to encourage people to do that, and a lot of people. And if anything, it just brings out competition. And you're not as he said, your body is learning new movements, and those all translate to football. So it's so smart to do, and I'm surprised that more people don't do that. And I know Trent Williams and Adrian Peterson play a lot of basketball in the offseason. And I mean, you see Trent Williams' movement skills. It seems like he's a great athlete, a basketball player. So I would love to know which other 49ers do the same.
Yeah. I saw some stats this week that I thought were interesting on RG3 when he was with Shanahan. He was 22. And he was in Kyle's offensive system. He won 9 games. He threw for 3,200 yards. He had 20 touchdowns passing, 5 picks, 8.1 yards per throw, which was the highest in the league. Ran for 815 yards, 7 rushing touchdowns that year. He went for 6.8 a carry, which was the league high. What do you think is when you see those numbers and you think of Trey Lance and his skill set, and he's not the exact same athlete as RG3. RG3 was probably not as physical, not as durable, but maybe a little quicker. What kind of numbers do you think? Do you think those are similar numbers to what you expect we may see out of Lance this year? Do you think that Lance will have those kinds of rushing totals, 800 plus rushing touchdowns, 7 rushing touchdowns, 6.8 a carry?
I don't think he'll be able to hit those rushing totals just because when you mentioned RG3, he was a world-class sprinter. He was a Big 12 hurdler champion, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly. Like, he had some legit dynamite long speed. And that's why he had those high averages. Like, he would break runs. So I think Trey Lance would be more of the 7, 8, 9, whereas RG3 was more of the 15 plus. But if you remember that offense, a lot of it is what the 49ers can do and were doing with Trey Lance early on. It was, riding out the play fakes, sucking up the second level of the defense and throwing, just replacing the linebackers where they were. And he would throw bombs too. Like, he would throw the deep post and they would hit on it quite a bit. And I think we will see a lot more of that because the defenses are just naturally going to respect the 49ers running game because it's Kyle Shanahan. And everything is built off the running game. So if they can get safeties to suck up, I think they are going to be able to hit a lot of those home runs. So I think we'll see those high averages, but probably not the high volume as far as the yardage goes when it comes to Trey Lance. What about you? I guess my question to you is, what part of Trey Lance's game will be the most similar to RG3?
Well, I think he's going to take care of the football. I really do. I know people, are concerned about, turnovers and that kind of thing. And we saw it with Jimmy, and some people think it's Kyle's offense that leads to the turnovers, the number of pass attempts. To me, I think you either are a guy that takes care of the football or you don't. I think Trey will take care of the football. I think, when you throw as few interceptions as he's threw, at North Dakota State, that's not fortune or the level that he played at. That's he's taking, he has an account of the players on the field. He knows where he wants to go with the football. And also maybe you're putting some smoke on it, right? Because then your errant passes aren't necessarily going to be easy to intercept. So I think he's going to take better care of the football than people think for a young quarterback. That'd be my guess.
So he threw, and a lot of people brought up this, in college, he didn't throw any interceptions. When I watched him, I thought he could have been more aggressive. I thought that he could have pulled the trigger and maybe fit some balls into some tighter windows. So I agree that he will take care of the ball, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily a good thing. Like, I want him to be, I don't know if trigger happy is the right word, but I'm okay with more variance and being just more aggressive in general. So do you agree with that, I guess, when I say he could have taken more chances?
Well, here's the thing on the FCS film. I watched as many games as I could for sure of Lance, and I sat there for hours, but I didn't because he played at North Dakota State. I didn't have the 6 and 7, 8 games where I sat there as a fan with popcorn and watched as the flow of the game. So I'm watching more, just because of the nature of YouTube and what's out there to digest, more of a highlight package of what he could do. So I don't know that that was kind of the hard part of the evaluation for me, is that you didn't get a feel for kind of down after down against a proven opponent like you would have if you had played in the SEC on TV week after week after week. So I didn't get a feel for it, but I mean, to me, what I've heard is that this is a guy who takes care of the football, but then I don't see like a reticence to keep his eyes downfield and to make the big play. I've seen a guy who's willing to let it go, at least with the 49ers. So I guess I'd have to see him kind of pass up some things. I thought he held the ball way too long in the first half against the Texans, and that was a concern. I really was concerned. Second half of the game, he really got it out of his hand, and I think they will try to devise ways to design plays that are intended to get it out of his hand to maybe establish that rhythm. But that's the other thing too, Kyle. It's kind of like I always remember the scenario. So like, this kid hasn't played a lot of football, and so my scrutiny of his play is a whole lot less than it would be if he had. You know what I mean? And so I was giving him kind of a wide berth, almost kind of like maybe James Wiseman that first year with the Golden State Warriors. If there's a comp, just you're a raw, incredible talent. I've made the evaluation that you're the right guy with the right talent. Now I'm just going to point you to the field, and I'm not going to be overly critical to begin with, because we've got plenty of time to kind of hone in and kind of sharpen you up. Does that make sense? Is that a decent comp?
Well, for a while here, he reminds me of, and I know this isn't a Warrior show, he reminds me of Kuminga just because the ceiling is so obvious. Like, this guy's going to be able to do whatever he wants. But at the same time, right now, if we're only focusing on what we're seeing right now, it's clear that he just doesn't know what he's doing yet. And you mentioned the Titans or even the Cardinals. There were times where he would drop back, and you could tell he just doesn't know the offense yet. And that's to be expected with a rookie. You mentioned take it away from college, and like, he was running over linebackers, running through safeties. Like, that's never going to happen in the NFL. Like, what are we doing here, man? Yeah. Like, it looks great on the highlight reel, but you can't take anything from those plays. What you could take away, though, is 1, 2, 3. His back foot hits. He launches down the sideline, and you're like, whoa, that was on target. That would hit the receiver in stride. Like, those are the plays that I feel like will transfer and have transferred to the NFL already. And he has the athleticism to be able to run away from guys a little bit, but I think his biggest asset right now is just playing and winning within the pocket. So knowing that he has that going for him will make him just a viable candidate right away.
Yeah, I mean, what I saw that I loved was advanced ball handling on the play action from under center.
Very important, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, very, very important. How you sell the play means so much, and to see it from such a young player, that just means that he's buying into the nuances. He's watching himself. He's aware that other teams are watching him. He's got to sell that fake. You don't just sell it on the handoff. You sell it with your shoulders, with your helmet, you've got to really sell it like you're handing it off. He's worked on it. I wouldn't be shocked. I bet you if you talk to him, you could get him to admit that he's worked on it in front of a mirror, because he's that good at it. Yeah. For a young guy, it really is incredible. So to me, it just kind of shows me of the bigger picture, which is it kind of it reaffirms what I've heard from the people that have gone in there, which is that football's vitally important to him. We have a chart that Ryan Smith is going to call up right here that I want to talk about. Ryan, if you could put that chart up, let's see if we can add that up. Wait, there we go. There we go. Now, you sent this to me. This is a Pro Football Focus ranking of each team by position. Is that correct?
Yeah.
and it's awfully small for people to see, but the 49ers 1-6 at the quarterback, 1-0 at running back, 2-0 at wide receiver, 3-8 at tight end, 2-0 at offensive line, and then 3-3 on the D line, interior, 3-3 at edge rusher, 4-0 at linebacker, 1-8 at cornerback, 1-4 at safety. Which number jumps out to you?
So a few do, but I mean, we can keep it quarterback, and let's start there. So 1-6, and the Commanders right above 1-5. So they're telling us they expect the same production from Carson Wentz and Trey Lance, which I don't know how you have that type of takeaway when you watch both players play. The surroundings make a lot of difference, just because Shanahan, Ayuk, Kittle, Deebo, and obviously the running game and the offensive line, who knows what type of production you're going to get there. But I just think, like, even the Patriots are 2-4. Mac Jones is going to be that much better than Trey Lance in year 2. I'm not buying that for one second at all. So I think people are taking the unknown with Trey Lance too far. He was number 3 overall pick. These guys usually get projected very highly. For whatever reason, that's not happening, and I don't know if we're overdoing it, the 2 starts, and because he had a completion percentage in the 50s, ignoring everything, ignoring the injury, ignoring not having to be able, or not being able to practice leading up to those games. So I think that's a bit low. I would say he should be closer to low 2s, mid 2s even.
Well, I mean, it's bizarre too, because if you look at the Jaguars at 1-9. Look at the 49ers weapons: Deebo, Ayuk, Kittle, Danny Gray, Ray McLeod, and then a whole slew of running backs. I mean,
Juwan Jennings would start for the Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, the 49er weapons, show me the team that is noticeably better than that. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. What would you expect? I've heard people say, the offense is going to look a lot different with Trey than it did with Jimmy, as far as the kinds of plays they run, the kinds of formations. What do you think we're going to see less of? What do you think we're going to see more of with Trey?
I think that's a better way to phrase it, just because, I mean, it's Kyle Shanahan's offense. They're still going to run wide zone. They're going to run wrinkles off that. They're going to run play action off that. They're going to run their little backside slant to Deebo and throw a bunch of screens, get the ball out quick. Like that's the mainstay. That's the nuts and bolts of the offense. But now,
is it going to be a lot more RPO now?
So they actually ran a lot of RPO with Jimmy, and I don't think people were aware of that. But to be fair, Kyle adapted his offense halfway through. That he said, Jimmy wasn't very comfortable turning his back. So for whatever, I think it was, they moved more to shotgun. So maybe we see more under center with Trey Lance, just because that's what he did in North Dakota. There was a true pro style type of offense with a fullback.
And that's a great way to, not interrupt you, but that's a great way to get Lance into a rhythm. If he's comfortable under center, it's a phenomenal, and he's not uncomfortable turning his back on the defense, then that's a phenomenal way through footwork to get him on to speed up his clock, to make sure that ball's coming out.
I think more than ever, though, and this goes without saying, we're going to see a lot of throws outside of the number. So off of that play, or off of that I formation, or even whatever it is under center, now we'll be able to see 10, 12-yard curl routes outside the numbers, or maybe off of play action, they'll be able to roll out and throw that far field comeback, which is a layup in any offense. You just have to have a quarterback to be able to make that throw. And I think that's where a guy like Brandon Ayuk is really going to make his hay, on those isolation routes. So I saw Brandon Ayuk's projections for this year. It was like 775 on Bet Online for his receiving yards. I would pound that over.
Yeah.
Knowing that he's probably going to be the guy on these isolation routes out of the pocket. What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. I'll tell you the other thing that I think we're going to see a lot of, because it puts a lot of pressure on the defense, just watching a little bit of the minicamp, I could see a little bit of the RPO where you hold the mesh point with Danny Gray or Ray McLeod, let's say, and running to the to the left, and then Lance holding that and at times handing that off. and you make a big play, you get the defense flowing east-west away from the quarterback, but then sometimes he fakes that, sprints right, and now to his throwing hand side, he's surveying the field as you stretch the defense, and he's got everything in front of him. I think that is going to be a play that's going to be very comfortable for Trey, and it's going to put a ton of pressure on defenses because we all know Trey in that scenario. I mean, if they want to, that would be the scenario I would like to see them actually run Trey in. When they're gonna run, when they can do, you hold that mesh point and use somebody with a lot of speed going the other way, and then let Trey sprint out of that and have the pass run option for the quarterback. I think that's a play where I like it no matter what's coming. If it lances on the keeper because he's got open green grass, I think he could make some huge plays that way with his legs. And then I think he's got the ability to make the home run play. As the defense is adjusting to the fake, he can take a look downfield and kind of found, the way he found Deebo last year, where he just moved out of the pocket, bought himself some extra time, and then threw a laser. I think Lance has the kind of arm that if your receivers can separate down the field, even just for a few seconds late in the down, I think he's going to be able to set his feet and fire it through traffic and get it there.
You remember the Trent Sherfield bomb in the preseason, right? That came off moving the pocket. So
yes,
I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And that was a big part of what RG3 did as well, like tying it all back. And even Matt Ryan, like they moved the pocket quite a bit with him. So again, if Kyle trusts his quarterback to make these throws outside the pocket, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for yards down the field. And then we haven't even really talked about the broken plays, right? So he's able to use his legs and extend plays. And when Trey Lance was out of the pocket last year, he wasn't really looking to run the ball. He was keeping his eyes downfield and looking to make plays for his receivers. So I think we're going to see quite a bit of broken plays for the 49ers too.
Interesting list there. The only other comment I would say is that I think the Niners are ranked too low at corner. To me, corner is not just about how good are your guys, 1, 2, 3, but now with teams going 4 and 5 wides and putting all kinds of receivers on the field at the same time, your depth at corner means a ton in the NFL. And the 49ers last year had some good initial guys, but no real depth. This year, they're far deeper on the corner. And I think that 1.8 is probably too low.
I wrote about Charvarius Ward this week, and I've been watching him quite a bit. So what Steve Spagnuolo did with the Chiefs is he essentially just left Charvarius on an island. And I have clips in that article from he's guarding CeeDee Lamb with no safety help. He's guarding Cortland Sutton with no safety help. He's guarding A.J. Brown with nobody near him. And what that allows you to do is have another set of eyes. Let's say, for example, Talanoa Funga. Now he doesn't have to worry about helping out the cornerback. Now he can worry about, poaching something over the middle or just being more aggressive against the run. So having that trickle-down effect, and now Charvarius Ward is guarding the number 1 guy. Now Emmanuel Mosley is guarding the number 2 guy, which you like your odds there. But I don't think people are aware of how well Charvarius Ward played. He was top 10. He was number 10 in success rate and pass yards or yards per pass allowed last year, following number 1 wide receivers around without the benefit of Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, and the 49ers pass rush. So I just think he's going to, we haven't seen his best yet, and he's just walking into a perfect situation. So I'm really excited to see what Charvarius does year 1. And yeah, I would have them a lot higher just based on that. I think Emmanuel Mosley is pretty solid too. He was top 25 in success rate last year. So again, it's not like he's a bad player. And I think based on his contract, he's outperformed that, but he's just not a CB1, and there's no shame in that.
And the numbers, as I said, I mean, you got Mosley, you got Ward, you got Darqueze Dennard. Okay, there's 3 NFL corners right there. And then you got Jason Verrett. You still got Ambry Thomas. You got Samuel Womack, the rookie out of Toledo. You got Diamador Lenore. I think it was Scott McLuhan who says that he's really intrigued by Tariq Castro Fields. There's Dante Johnson. There's Quantrez Knight. I mean, they're fortified with a lot of bodies in camp, and the competition at that spot's going to be good. Let's talk a little bit about Garoppolo for a second. Matt Barrows has tweeted out that Jimmy Garoppolo started throwing 3 weeks ago. And you would think as many people that are as honed in on what's going to happen with Garoppolo, what's the next step in the trade talks, where's he going to go, when's he going to go, when are they going to hand the keys to Trey? You would have thought that if Matt had that information that he probably would have went with it sooner, but that's the report that he started throwing 3 weeks ago. What do you make of that? Do you think that does align with the other report that I thought was pretty credible this week from Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, who reported on Monday, citing sources, that the assumption around the NFL is that the 49ers will find a trade partner for Garoppolo in the next few weeks. And his quote, he tweeted out, team execs are just starting to come back from vacation. He said most training camps open in 2 weeks. The expectation within the league continues to be that Garoppolo is traded somewhere by the end of the month.
Yeah, that makes sense, just because, why would the 49ers want to enter training camp with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? And by that, I mean, all we're going to do is get Jimmy questions. Nobody's going to care how well Trey Lance practiced. They're going to say, well, he threw this one incompletion, so is it Jimmy's turn now? That's all we're going to get. Or how long is Jimmy going to be on the roster? What are you guys going to do? Is he going to play out his contract? Are you going to trade him? That just sounds like a headache that I would not be willing to deal with. So the timing of just Barrow's report is a little interesting. Why didn't we hear about that a couple weeks ago? I mean, there's been rumors, and you see little tea leaves that he's been throwing for a couple weeks or whatnot. But I mean, I guess it does make sense. I don't know about you. I'm so ready to get this over with. Because it feels like the same thing, right? Sure, he's going to be healthy, but this was the timetable that we heard back in January. So nothing's really changed, right? He was supposed to be healthy around July, start throwing for other teams, prove that he's healthy, and then there's going to be interest when that happens. Everything is happening right now that we knew about in January. Now we're just hearing more and more reporters bringing up about it, but it's not even really interesting to me, right? It's more about where he's going to land than anything. If he proves that he's healthy right now, is that really what matters? Don't you want to know, is he going to be healthy come October? Is he going to be healthy come November when you actually have to play football and take hits?
The other angle on this thing, on Monday, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN reported that Seattle's doing research on Garoppolo. He says that John Lynch and he shared that John Lynch and the Niner front office and the Seahawks are all watching film and doing their due diligence. Seattle's got $15 million, Kyle, in estimated salary cap room. That's higher than the Niners, who currently have $4 million under the cap, according to Spot Track. But that's not enough to take on Garoppolo's $24 million salary, if indeed he went there. I had Dave Softy Mahler on from KJR, and I've talked to him a couple times about this. When it was first reported that maybe the Seahawks would have interest, Dave was like, nah, they're not interested. For sure. He was adamant about it too. They're going to go Geno Smith, Drew Lock. They're not interested in Jimmy. When I asked him about it this week on the radio, he was like, well, we're not really sure. And, don't really see it as a fit, but, they're looking at it up there as almost kind of like a throwaway year. The Dolphins tanked for Tua. Maybe the Seahawks are trying to tank for a high, top 5 pick in the draft next year, and they can draft their quarterback of the future next year. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical on the whole tanking thing because Pete Carroll is, one of the NFL's older coaches. John Schneider, I know, is very, very competitive, and they had a pretty good draft. And what do you think of Seattle's interest in Jimmy? How would you feel about Jimmy winding up there?
So if I'm Seattle and my objective is to tank, I'm not going to go get Jimmy Garoppolo. What's going to happen is they're going to be just good enough where you miss out on a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud or whatever quarterback is going to be the guy next year. And now you're kind of stuck in no man's land with a middle round pick, which you're not going to be able to have. If you do want a quarterback, you're going to have to trade extra picks, and that's just not the goal of tanking. So I wouldn't do that for financial reasons, for the future reasons as well. As far as how I would feel about Jimmy, if I'm the it sounds like the 49ers don't fear him based on letting teams come in and negotiate his contract. And that's what Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated said earlier this week, that they've been open and willing to let teams come in and say, hey, if you want Jimmy, talk to him, talk to his camp. Here he is. And, here's the number. We need to get this down. It doesn't sound like the 49ers are going to be too interested in paying, which is a whole other argument. But I would say that it wouldn't bother me if he's with the Seahawks. Like, sure, they're probably going to be better than what you initially thought. But, I mean, the 49ers are struggling against the Seahawks the last few years. So, if anything, right, you would want Jimmy and hope that your luck would be a little bit better without Russell Wilson. But what about you? Do you think Jimmy raises the ceiling enough where that would put fear in your eyes?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at it from John Lynch's perspective. I mean, if Lynch moves on from Garoppolo and goes to Trey Lance, and he sends him to the Browns, and he plays well with the Browns. Okay, that's one thing. But if he trades him to the Seahawks, or if somehow he releases him and he winds up with the Seahawks, and the Seahawks beat the 49ers head to head, and Trey Lance, for whatever reason, takes a couple years to develop, and 49ers go 6-11, and the Seahawks go 11-7 or whatever, and or 11-6 and wind up in the playoffs. Yeah, I mean that the heat will be on John Lynch. I don't think there's any question about that. I think that that John needs to win a trade. I mean, I think when you look at the whole thing with Kinlaw and Buckner, it's like, okay, I mean, you can't call that a win. And when you look at the D Ford trade, you can't call that a win. So the Garoppolo trade to get Garoppolo was probably the win. So what do you get when they pivot away from him and part ways with him? Can they win that as well? Now, I would view that as a win would be if they could get a third or a fourth round pick or better for Jimmy. I view that as a win, especially when they traded a second to get him, and you think about all the football they got out of him. I would look at that as a win. So I think if I'm Lynch, I want to get at least that. He may view a win as a second round pick, because if they hold him, they can maybe get a third round comp pick at the end of next year. So I'm not sure what John Lynch views as a win, but I'm pretty sure that he's going to be judged by both the Niner fans and maybe the Niner owners on this trade, and why they like him. And I think they like the roster, and obviously they like what they've done up to this point. I think there's some pressure on Lynch to win this trade. I mean, how do you view it? Do you view Lynch and winning the trade being any part of this at all?
I don't, just because. So they traded a second round pick for Jimmy, and they've gotten two NFC championships, two NFC championships and a Super Bowl appearance with him. I feel like no matter what happens, that trade is already won. You don't get that type of value from a quarterback in the second round. Like, that just doesn't happen. I'm sure if you were to look back through the archives, there would be few and far between with second round quarterbacks who have had the type of production on a team. And I'm not saying Jimmy was the only reason, but I'm just saying when he's under center, they won when he's healthy. So whatever happens now, just because of the shoulder injury, like, there's so many other moving variables with his contract, the shoulder injury. The timing of it is a big reason why. So if they are just able to get anything out of, if it's a day 3 conditional pick, that should be viewed as a win. Everything after that is out of their controls. Like, if he goes to Cleveland, for example, which I still think he ends up where he ends up, why would that be any different if he plays half the season in Cleveland as opposed to a full season in Seattle? So I don't think it should be viewed as, a win or a loss in that sense. I think they already got the best and the most out of the Jimmy that they could.
Dusty Gold in the chat says Lockett and Metcalf will be upset with Jimmy's play. He's got no deep throw. Well, I will say this. I mean, I definitely think, Jimmy's lack of down the field accuracy and Metcalf's kind of inability to adjust. I mean, for a big man, he's got a relatively small catch radius. It's like you got to put it on his hands, or he doesn't adjust well to the ball in the air. And I think Russell Wilson has made him look better than he is, or at least made him look better than most quarterbacks would. And I think going from Russell to Jimmy could really slow down Metcalf's numbers. I don't see them being a good fit. How do you see Metcalf and Garoppolo if indeed that's Seattle's number one pass option?
Yeah, think about it. I mean, Russ was hitting him with those moon balls, like he was hitting him in stride, a 4-3
Right.
guy in stride down the field. And a lot of times that was off a broken play when Russ is having to scramble. We've seen what happens when Jimmy holds on to the ball after 2 seconds. I imagine his stats when it's the play's gone after 2.5 seconds just plummet. So, and I kind of agree with you about Metcalf. I saw in the ESPN did the top 10 rankings for every position. They had
Right.
Metcalf over AJ Brown, and I just do not agree with that at all. I love Lockett. Actually, I think Lockett's better at adjusting when the ball's in the air than DK Metcalf is. I think
Yeah.
Lockett's
Oh,
very
Lockett's a tremendous receiver. He's just small.
yeah, but that's the only knock, and he stays healthy. Like he's always in the playing the game. But yeah, those receivers just aren't the type that would fare well with Jimmy. And I don't know that he would be a great fit in that offense. Just how they really win in general, right? A lot of it is broken plays with Russ, so it would have to rely on a lot of timing, and that just doesn't seem like Jimmy's game.
Let's talk about key 49ers with camp just being a couple weeks away. A guy at the barbershop asked me this the other day. He's like, who's the key this year, man? What's the key for the Niners? You know, he just wanted me to shout out a name. And I'm like, well, I look at it as twofold. And I gave him an answer. I just said, hey, I think Trey Lance, I mean, let's not bury the lead. I think Trey Lance is the key guy on offense. I mean, how does he play? I think there's a huge range of possibilities here. He could be extremely raw and make a number of mistakes and cost them a number of games, or he could be far, far more advanced than people are even envisioning, and that he, shows that he's, the next great young quarterback in the league. I think he's going to be closer to the latter than the former. I get a lot of confidence in Trey Lance. Now, I've talked to a lot of people who I really believe in, who have spent the time to evaluate him, have gone into North Dakota State and watched their film and studied the kid and know far more about him than I do. And they swear by this kid as far as prospect, between the ears, he's got it. Leadership, he's got it. Desire to be not just good, but phenomenal, he's got it. So to me, it's a matter of how good's his surrounding cast. It's terrific. How good's his play caller? He's outstanding. But then there's a couple other factors. How good's this Niner offensive line? It may not be great. We've got Trent Williams. We know is going to be great at left tackle. Everybody to the right of Trent Williams, you could argue, is a question mark. So that muddies the water a little bit and clouds the picture. So, I think Trey Lance is the key guy offensively, but it's probably the offensive line other than left tackle and Trey Lance. And then on defense, I said it was Javon Kinlaw. I think Kinlaw has the ability to step in for DJ Jones and equal what DJ did, but it ain't going to be easy. And teams are going to go at him, and they're going to try to run through the A gaps. And if Kinlaw can plug that up, even if Kinlaw winds up with 0 sacks, I don't care if he plays the entire year and never sacks the quarterback. If he plugs those A gaps like DJ Jones, shuts down the inside run, to me, that's mission accomplished. So I'll say Kinlaw and Lance are the two key guys with a little side to the rest of the O-line. How do you see it?
So with Lance, I think I want to see like how his command of the team is from the huddle, from taking charge of the plays. I think with the whole arm fatigue thing, with his teammates having his back as quickly as they did, I think that's a great sign. I want to see how, is he frazzled when things go wrong? Like, how does he bounce back? Because he's going to throw interceptions in training camp. He's going to make mistakes in training camp. Does he brush them off? Does he bounce back? Or does he let those things affect him? And now he just kind of plateaus or just goes downward. Like there's a downward spiral for the day. But when he has a respect of his teammates, I imagine that's going to go a long way. So I'm not really worried. It's weird to say for a guy who started 2 games and who really didn't play the last couple of years that you're not really worried about him. But when you look at his surroundings, when you look at everything that goes on with the 49ers, like the past couple of years, quarterback really doesn't do a lot. They just have to throw to open receivers, and there's always open receivers on the 49ers. So I think Trey's going to be he's going to be just fine there. I think you're spot on when you talk about the offensive line. I think it's got to be whoever's at center, whether it's Brindle, whether it's Brunskill, whether it's one of these young dudes. Are they going to be able to recognize what's going on up front? If that happens, then I think the 49ers offense will be just fine. On defense, I think it's Charvarius Ward. I really do. I think they have potential to have signed a home run here, just because, again, when you have a CB1, think about how they played last year down the stretch. They had no shot guarding A.J. Brown, guarding Jamar Chase. Like, down the stretch, all these receivers, they were killing the Niners. D'Amico Ryans had to double Devontae Adams in the Packers in the playoffs just to have a shot, like just to have a chance for the game to be close. That's not going to be the case with Charvarius Ward. Now you can actually be aggressive. You don't have to sit back on third down. You don't have to spot drop in zones. You can go after the quarterback. And I think that's really where the 49ers will be at their best, when they get multiple defenders who can actually run on the field. So I think Ward will be the real key. And it's not so much of him being a lockdown corner. It's just the fact that he can compete. So I think Charvarius Ward on defense is mine, and then whoever comes out at center on offense.
Let's talk a little bit about Tart versus Hufanga. Tart had 4 picks in 7 seasons with the Niners, and then only had 2 interceptions in college at Samford. So he's never been a productive interceptor. And for those saying, well, they ought to bring Tart back, Tart went to the Eagles about 3 weeks ago. So that ship has sailed. He's moved on. They let him go, and he went to Philly, and we'll see where it goes. It's pretty clear from the minicamp that they love Talanoa Hufanga. And when you look at Hufanga's career at SC, he had 4 interceptions in only 6 games his final year at SC. So he's a far more productive interceptor. How do you see the transition from Tart to Hufanga? Do you think did the Niners lose anything in that transition, or is that in your mind an upgrade? How do you see that transition?
So I think it's going to be a downgrade. And I think by saying that, I think Ward's going to help them enough to where we won't notice how big of a downgrade it is. But last year, I love success rate, just because that just tells you how the player did when they were targeted. You mentioned Tart's numbers as far as interceptions goes. He was he didn't have a lot of pass breakups, and he didn't have a lot of interceptions. And that was the big knock on him. But when he was targeted, he just didn't give up plays. When him and Jimmy Ward were on the field, the 49ers were, I believe, top 3 in explosive pass rate. And he was 12th among all DBs, not just safeties, but including cornerbacks and safeties. He was 12th in success rate. He just didn't give up anything, man. And even when he did give up a pass, it was something underneath, like it was something short. And then that goes without him filling in the holes in the running game, or just doing things that don't show up on the box score that you really need, like him running down Aaron Jones in the Packers game. Like, those are the plays that don't show up that he just did every game. I think he's a hell of a player. I know that the injuries were a big deal, and that's probably why you couldn't rely on him for another year, or I guess for another contract. So they need Hufanga to stay healthy, because that is a big deal. And he also just needs to kind of be a glue guy, because that's what Tart was. That's how I viewed Tart. So I'm not expecting Hufanga to be this ball hawking all-pro safety. If he can just be a glue guy, not miss tackles, and make plays when they're presented, they'll be fine. You're bullish on him, though.
I love him. I love Hufanga. I just think he's a step and a half faster than a year ago. The instincts are incredible. His timing on the stuff underneath is impeccable, and I think he understands that his challenge is down the field coverage. I think he's going to work at it. He plays the game with poise and intelligence and under control, but he also loves to detonate and hit. And I just think he's a tremendous player. I think he's going to be a strength. I really do. Now, there's a lot of running at that position, and your depth at safety, I think, matters. I mean, I've seen teams show up in camp with 6 or 7 safeties and go through them because guys are throwing their bodies around and bodies start to break. So I'm real concerned about the depth at safety. You got Hufanga and you got Jimmy Ward. If those guys can stay healthy all year, I think they look pretty good at safety. Now, the problem is, if either of those guys go down, that next level, you have George Odom, who comes in as a free agent from the Colts. He's got a reputation as a special teamer. He's an all-pro special teamer, but he's still a special teamer. Tarvarius Moore, to me, is not an NFL He's not a scrimmage player. He's a special teamer strictly. I mean, he takes terrible angles. Then there's Taylor Hawkins, who was a very productive player at San Diego State, but on the corner. And then you have Leon O'Neal, who's guaranteed he's going to make the team, and I loved him at A&M. He's a confident player, and he's got better ball skills than the other safeties. He's got prototypical size. It's just a matter of speed and coverage ability down the field. So I think if they suffer injuries at safety, they're going to be hitting the waiver wire for other veteran bodies, and that's a concern because if you have a number of injuries at safety, that could really be one of the downfalls for the season. But they're obviously committed to Odom and using that on a special teamer. They've talked up Tarvarius Moore, but I gotta think that they're just trying to take a positive approach. Who do you see as are you concerned about the depth at safety? And do you think that, let's just say it's a Fonga, Jimmy Ward, George Odom, who's going to be the fourth safety there?
I think I'm concerned about the depth everywhere, right? If one guy goes down, it's gulp. What do we do now? Because depth guys are great when they're depth, but when they're playing starter snaps, that's usually when they get exposed, and that's not what you want. Like, they're depth guys for a reason. The way you feel about Hufanga, I feel about Tarvarius Moore. I love him. When he was on the field in 2020, they were very good. He played in 2019 as that extra DB when Salah wanted speed on the field. So this is going out on a limb here and assuming that he's going to have the same speed before an Achilles, which there's no guarantee he's going to be able to run. But when he was a 4.33 guy, he could flat out fly. I think he could give them that added dimension, whether it's in the box, whether it's guarding guys in the slot, or whether it's being that deep center fielder that allows Hufanga to kind of roam over the middle of the field. So he doesn't have to be this ball hawk guy. He can just be the center field safety and now you can have Jimmy Ward in the slot if you don't have a nickel that you trust. So I think Moore will be able to give them versatility in other spots. So hopefully he's healthy. Hopefully he has, the speed and athleticism before pre-injury, but I like him quite a bit.
That's interesting because I see him as one of the best athletes on the entire team, but I like him as a corner. I think I'd rather play him at corner because I've seen him take some bad angles where it's like, wow, that's not just a bad angle. That's like historically bad. So I'm kind of wondering if safety's in his mix or if he's just big, long, fast, athletic. He's got some dominant physical traits. We're talking about a 6'1" corner, long arms, who ran like 4.31 and has great quickness, great measurables. And you mentioned the injury. It's a huge camp for him. I mean, Shanahan's talked him up. So maybe he's showing them something in the offseason program and he's going to be heard from. That would be a pleasant surprise. That really would.
Yeah,
for me.
Again, just based on what he did when he was on the field in 2019 and 2020, just super aggressive. And you need guys who can run, who are aggressive. And sure, like there might be times where he misses a tackle, but in my opinion, when you have those guys who can fly around, and if they miss a tackle, a lot of times there's somebody right there to clean it up. And that happens with a lot of the linebackers on this team. So I think he can really add a dimension that they lacked last year.
Give me a bold prediction. You got a bold prediction, something that if people heard you say it, they would be surprised, but maybe a month from now they'd say, you know what? Damn, that Kyle Posey's sharp as hell. Do you have a bold prediction, something that you believe about either a player or this roster or the league, or just anything that you know, like you feel, but you know that maybe the consensus might go the other way right now?
Mike McGlinchey stays healthy all year and has a great season.
That's your bold prediction.
I think either Mike, because people hate Mike McGlinchey. You would think that he is unrosterable the way people talk about McGlinchey.
Right.
He's coming off of a season-ending injury, so he's going to have to fight that. But I think either whether it's McGlinchey or even Brunskill, I think Brunskill's a lot better than people are willing to give him credit for as well. So I think both of those guys are going to have rock solid seasons. And maybe I should just say this. I am not concerned about the offensive line one bit, whether it's Jake Brindle, whether it's like all the names that we know. I don't think that they're going to be bad. And I think they're going to be closer to a top 10 unit than Trey Lance having to run for his life. Do you think I'm way out of whack when I say that?
That the offensive line is not a concern?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not that concerned because there's depth of talent. Okay. And when you have, I was more concerned a year ago because the guys, after if they had any kind of injuries, I mean, the depth really wasn't there. But now you've got, Banks in year 2, Jalen Moore in year 2. You look at some of those rookies. Jason Poe looks like he's, a guy who is short, but looks like a guy who they can compete for a spot. I mean, Zakel, Donovan West, Spencer Burford. Colton McKivitz. There's bodies here. Justin School, we forgot about him. He's been out for a long period of time. Right. So I just think there's great depth there. To me, I guess my concern with the O-line is McGlinchey, because it's hard to find tackles where there's a number of guys you could plug in at guard or center and probably get by. So I guess my concern would be that quad for McGlinchey. But yeah, I'm not that concerned about Banks and Brendel as far as what they'll be able to do, because if they can't do it, I think they've got other guys there that can. I like Jalen Moore. I think he's an NFL starter. I like Colton McKivitz. I think he's a suitable inside player. He may not be an all-pro player, but I don't think he's a street free agent type. I think he's an NFL, starting caliber player. So I like some of the depth on that O-line. So I'm not that concerned. And I've heard great things about Brendel. I liked Banks at Notre Dame. I think there's depth there. That's not a concern for me.
I think Lance will also elevate the offensive line in ways that Garoppolo didn't, to where these concerns won't be an issue. Well, whether it's sacks, and I think he's going to run out of a lot of sacks. I think he's going to either get rid of the ball to the point where you don't notice the offensive line getting beaten. So there are a lot of things that I think Trey Lance will add to, again, and the same with the rushing attack too. I think he's going to make them so much better that we're in for a show when it comes to the 49ers offense. And it's not going to happen week 1 or week 2, but I think by the time the midseason hits, they're going to be rolling for sure.
I would say my bold prediction is Samuel Womack is going to be part of the mix right away. That would be my guess.
Him.
I love Womack. I do. I really
is it the confidence? Like you're.
I love the confidence, but I also love the physical dominance and the movement ability, and the need is there. And I don't know how he'll look in drills at the beginning of camp, but I'm pretty confident that he's going to look damn good in those preseason games. And then they're going to see that, and they're going to be like, "Wow, we got something here." And I think he'll play. I would not be surprised if he stepped in front of Diamador Lenore and in front of, maybe even in front of Ambry Thomas as time goes on. I mean, I really like Womack. I think Womack is really intriguing.
4.36 at his pro day.
What's that?
4.36 at his pro day, I'm pretty sure.
Is that what he ran? Wow. I didn't know that.
You can't fake the ball production that he had. There's no getting around that. And at Toledo, they had a very good secondary, and they used him all over the place. So when you mention need, like, he is a legit need, and I would not be surprised one bit if he wins the Nichols job too. Just again, so when you talk about like his, I don't want to say cockiness, but it borders cockiness the way that he walks around. That's a good thing. That shouldn't be viewed as a bad thing. No, you have to have that.
It's a necessity.
Yes, necessity, exactly. So if he is that confident in his skills and he knows when the ball's coming my way, he has that my ball mentality, would not be a shock at all. So I think I'm with you there too.
All right, 2 last ones before we let you go. We're talking with Kyle Posey. It's our Niners Nation edition of the Krueg Show. We love doing this. It's one of our favorite segments of the week. A lot of people in the chat with their questions, but I'm dominating the questions today and putting a stiff arm up to the chat. No, I'm just joking. If you're in the chat and you got something really great, we'll throw it in there. But 2 last ones from me, and if we see something in the chat, we'll go over there too. One is, I think it's kind of interesting when you look at the 49ers last year. Nick Bosa was their number 1 sack guy, and Arden Key was number 2, and that was a surprise. Nobody anticipated Arden Key at this point of last year being the number 2 sack guy on the 49ers. Who will be their number 2 sack guy behind Nick Bosa this year?
So real quick on Arden Key, like he was so good, and I don't think he got enough credit. And I'm glad that he got paid in Jacksonville. Like somebody was going to pay him off the season, but he came on so strong last year that he deserved the contract he got. It's not going to be easy to replace him because remember, like what they would do is they would kick him inside, and he would just whoop whatever guard he went against. And so it has to be an athlete like that. I don't know if it's going to be Eric Armstead. I think Samson Ebukam is going to be better. But I have a sneaky suspicion it's going to be Charles Omenihu, man. I think, like, again, we're just talking athletes. He's long, he's strong, and he has good get off. And he won a lot last year in limited sample size. And even with the Texans, he had some plays where it's like, wow, this guy can really play football. So I think a year or two under Chris Kosirik with the guys around him, I think Charles Omenihu is going to be a guy that surprises a lot. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the rotation and he's a guy who gets more than 5 sacks next year. What about you? Where are you going?
I'm going Kamoko Toure. I'm going Kamoko Toure from the Colts. I mean, I just think he's got the right build. There's going to be an opportunity there. I could see Drake Jackson taking some time, and I love Omenihu as well. And I really think that's a great option. Heck, I like Jordan Willis. I think Jordan Willis, Omenihu, Kamoko Toure, Drake Jackson, Ebukam, all these guys are gonna get in there. Kerry Hyder, but I think Toure has a little bit more bend, a little bit more length. He's in his prime. He's had a taste of the league. He's not going to get doubled. I think Kinlaw can absorb bodies up front. I think Armstead has got functional strength for days, and Bosa is just one of the best in the league. And so I think Toure's going to get some run, and I think everything's going to slide towards Bosa. He's going to get opportunities one-on-one, and I think he's going to dip that shoulder and get to the quarterback. I say he winds up with over 6.5 sacks, maybe 7.5, 8.5, somewhere in that range. Oh, wow. I'll go Kamoko Toure. I like Toure to kind of, this is a perfect line for him. And I like what I saw at the mini camp. I think this is the guy that kind of fires this year.
So by saying that, you are essentially saying Toure is going to stay healthy all season, because that's like the only word, right? Like you have to, but if he's going to produce, he has to be on the field. For him to be on the field, he has to stay healthy, which has been a problem dating back to college. So if I asked you over under 12 games played for Toure, you say?
I'll say over. I'll say over. I think because he's, the other thing in college, I watched him in college. He was an every down guy in college. You don't have to be an every down guy. This is a defensive front. I mean, the first day of the meetings, when they break up into groups, they probably, the first call of training camp is going to be Chris Kocherik saying he needs more chairs, in his room. Because I mean, think about it. He's got so many guys. He's got ones, he's got twos, he's got threes, he's got four. He's got 4 lines of guys. There's great depth there. So I think the competition for the backup D line spots is going to be fierce, and that's always a good thing. We're going back to the barbershop because I was there about 2 weeks ago, and one of the guys walked in and he said, Krueg, I'm so glad I ran into you. I'm like, why? He's like, because you're the best guy to give me the watch out for list. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, you always tell me watch out for this guy, watch out for that guy. You go deep on that stuff. I love that stuff. The guy wanted my cell phone. I was like, hey, how about this? We'll meet here at the barbershop. I don't know about the cell phone, but I will say, if I'm saying watch out for, if you're like going to go to camp and you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm a diehard Niner fan and I know all the stars and I think I know most of the names, but give me 1 or 2 guys to watch out for. I would say the guys to watch out for, the 2 guys that come to mind, and I've said it time and time again, but Tay Martin, who's going to wear 83 in practice. Somebody posted some Tay Martin clips from, I think it was Wazoo. He started at Wazoo. He finished at Oak State. He was great at both spots, which is one of the reasons I love him. But also, I just watched this kid at the end of the year in like 3 or 4 games, and every time I watched him, he's getting open, he's making plays, he's making contested catches, he's taking hits. He's got quickness for days. Then somebody posted on Twitter, just a simple route where he got off the line of scrimmage, and just on quickness alone, he freed himself up on like a slant for like I would say he was 3 or 4 yards in the clear, and it was just a real 2-step, 3-step quickness off the line, and that is big time. So I'm going to go Tay Martin, who's going to wear 83, wide receiver, stacked at wide receiver. It's going to be hard to make the team, but remember that name. And then Niner fans are going to love this Georgia Tech running back, Jordan Mason. They're stacked at running back. Mitchell, Wilson, Ty Davis-Price, Trey Sermon, Hasty, Juszczyk. But they also got this undrafted free agent named Jordan Mason, who's about 225 pounds, tremendous contact balance, can catch the ball out of the backfield, faster than you think, stronger than he looks. I really like Jordan Mason. So I like the depth at running back and wide receiver, Kyle, as you can see.
So the preseason is just built for guys like Jordan Mason just to have big stages, right? So think about it. You mentioned 225. He's going to be going up against a bunch of backups. He's going to be able to outrun and run through those backups. So I think that it's going to be tough for him to make the roster just because, again, just drafted a running back this year, drafted 2 running backs last year. So he's going to be on the outside looking in, but practice squad, hang around in case somebody gets hurt. And then he gets his opportunity, might not ever look back. So that's a name that I'm kind of – I won't say I'm surprised he went undrafted, but he has the talent to be on an NFL roster. There's no doubt about it. But, I think a lot of the names that we've already talked about, I would have said Samuel Womack if you didn't say him already. I know he's a draft pick, but not a lot of people know about fifth-rounders. And, again, guys who can get their hands on the ball in training camp settings. So quarterbacks are going to throw the ball a ton, and we will know who's having interceptions. We will know the quarterback's completion percentages because that's what we do at training camp. So, I think Womack's a guy to keep an eye out on. And then just if I were to pick a guy on the offensive side, since you said Mason, I would actually go Trey Sermon, who is a high draft pick. So, but again, we're talking about running backs who are able to show out in a practice setting. And I think we're going to see more and more throws to running backs. And that's where Trey Sermon is going to make a name for himself in August.
Couple interesting ones from the chat. Distortion Production says Ty Davis-Price runs 4.4 and weighs 220. He's going to truck some fools.
He's going to start.
Yeah, I mean, I love what I've seen from him, both at LSU and the brief times I've seen him. He was hurt in the last mini camp. Hopefully he'll be a full go. One more in here that I want to get. We'll finish with this one from Rams. He says, "Free Deebo." You can just tell he doesn't want to be there. This is a Rams fan who got in the chat. He's trying desperately. Earlier in the chat, the same guy also tweeted, "Free Deebo, bring him to the Rams. We will get him a ring." But I don't, not as much on the Ram front, but just let's finish on the Deebo front. Where are we with Deebo Samuel right now? As far as he demanded a trade, he didn't get that trade. They drafted Ty Davis-Price and Danny Gray. I think those guys were there to try to make Deebo happy and to take some of the workload off of his plate. I really think that it's a 2-step thing at the beginning of camp, where Garoppolo gets traded and Deebo gets extended. And if I had to guess, I think he'll get around $55 million guaranteed. Right. That'd be my guess on how that. I think Garoppolo gets traded, and that money that's I think Bosa waits another year. I think Deebo, because he's on the last year of his rookie deal, they'll do an extension. I think he'll get $50+ million guaranteed, and I think the combination will make him happy, and he'll rescind his trade demand. But what do you see with Deebo? How do you think it's going to play out? Do you think he still wants to be traded? Do you think that he's been appeased by some of the things the 49ers have communicated to him? Where do you think they are? Where do you think he is going into camp?
I mean, as far as the Rams go, he in both regular season games, unprompted, like the first thing he does is go to Instagram or go to social media and post that whatever about Aaron Donald, who doesn't know his name, after Deebo does Deebo things against the Rams. So I'm pretty sure he's not going to go there, but I think we're going to laugh at all of this come September. So I agree with you. He's probably going to get around $50 million guaranteed, and then once that happens, none of this is going to matter at all. We're going to forget about the trade request. We're going to forget about a lot of the things that went on this offseason because it's going to be football. And that's what he really wants to do. That's what he cares about. So I think they're going to be able to mend the relationship. I think that, again, once he gets back to catching passes, once he sees his role in the offense, and it's probably not going to be too much different, I think that he'll be fine. So I think it's the whole Deebo situation. I guess this is the best way I could put it. The whole Deebo situation is peak NFL offseason, where we talk about things that really don't matter when in the end, he just wants to play football. 49ers are going to give him money. 49ers don't have money to give him right now. Once they do, it'll be an afterthought. So I'm not really worried about anything Deebo related at all.
All right, man, we'll let you go. What are you working on for Niners Nation? Give it a quick tease.
Yeah, I think so. Still hammering away on some D'Amico Ryan stuff. I really want to highlight a lot of the things that he did last year, and I want to tie into how Charvarius Ward's going to make the entire defense better, and D'Amico Ryan specifically. So I'm going to spend next week hammering home on the defense.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Charvarius Ward. He might be the closest thing the 49ers have had to a number one corner in a long, long time. Kyle, awesome stuff as usual, man. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah.